Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Sharice Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. We are here with Georgia Homsany, and she is the founder of Daily Dose and an author of You're Not Lazy. And I'm excited to have her on today because I think that it's a good reminder of how important it is to have positive self-talk so that you can accomplish your daily goals. So Georgia, how about you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Sharice. Hi, everyone that's listening. Yes, I am Georgia Homsany. I worked in corporate America for 15 years and reached a point of burnout, which led me to create my current company, Daily Dose, which works with different businesses to help their employees become more educated on wellness topics and prevent themselves from getting to that point of burnout. So over the course of the last 4 years, all the work that I've done on mindset and understanding the psychology of things has led me to write the book, You're Not Lazy. Change your words to change your worth. So it's really all about identifying patterns that we do and things that we say to ourselves and how our negative self-talk actually impacts us. Because I don't think a lot of people even realize they're doing it and how that can affect them, their confidence, and how they're making decisions.
I totally agree. So we were talking before we got on, and in my book that I'm writing, it talks about how many thoughts that go through our head every single day. And so
Yeah.
do you want to talk about how many there are versus how many are positive?
Yes. Well, I don't know about the research you found, Sharice, but the stats that I was looking at are we could have anywhere from 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts per day, which actually is astonishing to me because I was trying to do the math on an hourly basis and I'm like, how is that even possible? But I guess if you think about even when we're sleeping and dreaming and all these thoughts are going through our head. So yeah, when you think about that, how expansive that number is, and 80% of those thoughts are negative, which is really alarming, and 90% are repetitive.
Yep.
So if you start to think about this a little bit more and kind of start to track what's going through your head on a daily basis, you know, a lot of times we're telling ourselves the same things on repeat, and it might be something that we've heard since we were a kid that now we just continue to say as an adult, or maybe someone in the workplace always tells us something. So yeah, we kind of adopt these phrases and just kind of say them over and over again. And unfortunately, yeah, 80% ends up being negative.
And your numbers are, we didn't even talk before this about what the numbers were, but close to mine. So it tells you that it's a fact.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with the book title, You're Not Lazy?
Yeah. So I have friends of mine that would say it over and over again. Oh, I'm so lazy. I didn't go to the gym. Oh, I'm so lazy. I didn't clean my apartment. Oh, I'm so lazy. I need to get this work done. I didn't. And they're not lazy. These people are not lazy. And so it was driving me crazy because I'm like, you're not lazy. You just wanted to enjoy your Sunday without having to do a chore. Like, that doesn't make you lazy. So that's where the title came from. I mean, the book is so much more beyond laziness. I know there's a lot of books out there about laziness, and but really the point of the book is that title is using one phrase that I hear a lot, and it's really just building off of that. So in the book, I call them the lies. So what are things that we say? Oh, I'm so bad at, insert anything there. I don't know if you want to share, Sharice, things that you say. I'll say like, oh, I'm so bad at numbers. I've always been bad at math. I can't, when I started my career in marketing, and it's funny, my coworker and I, we used to split. We had this campaign we worked on, and my budget numbers were always off. And I'm like, I don't understand this. I went to school for business. I've worked in Excel my whole life, yet my budget numbers would always not sync up. So I kind of always adopted this, oh, I'm bad at numbers, I'm bad at numbers. But what happens is you keep saying that and you're essentially manifesting what you're speaking. So now I feel like I'm continuing to be bad at numbers because I keep telling myself I'm bad at numbers. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I call that the self-fulfilling prophecy because,
Yes.
I used to teach college and I heard it all the time from my students. So my parents always said, I'm not any good. I'll never amount to anything. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. Like actually, my husband, I was talking to him one time, and those things, there's moments in your childhood that are just like leave a mark. And when I hear the same story that my husband keeps telling me over and over, I'm like, okay, that left a mark. And he was talking to his dad about what he should do when he grows up. And his dad's like, whatever you do, don't be this, which is what he was, because he knows the dangers of it. And so my husband's like, okay, well, I want to do this. And his dad literally said, nope, you're not going to be good at that. And so he like automatically, okay, my dad says I can't do that. So therefore I'm not good at that. And so I see him now, his whole life, he still believes that. I'm like, that isn't a true statement, And so I think, yeah, if we keep telling ourselves stuff, we start to believe it. Whereas if you tell yourself, I'm beautiful, or I am wonderful at this, or like your mind doesn't know the difference. And so you can start to train yourself.
Exactly. And that can be hard to do because if you think, I hate saying things like, oh, I'm ugly. But if someone thinks that they're not beautiful, let's say, going from, oh, I don't feel pretty, I'm not beautiful, to then telling yourself I'm beautiful, it's going to feel very strange. So, and I learned this, so I talk about this in the book, kind of what's that transition point and kind of getting to a neutral zone. And a lot of the learnings, I have a podcast, another podcast I listen to that I love, Cara Lowenthal, so I'll just give her the credit on this because a lot of her teachings kind of made this click for me, and I talk about it in the book. But if you're going from one extreme to the next, what's that middle ground? And really trying to neutralize. So instead of saying I'm beautiful, maybe just saying something that's factual that doesn't have a positive or negative connotation to it. So it sounds weird, but bear with me. If you're just like, I have a face, I have a body, there's no is that good or bad, but it's just something that is true that doesn't have that negative association. So instead of going from I'm not pretty, I have a wardrobe, I have a body, it's just something that's neutral, and then kind of slowly working your way to saying something positive. The other thing I tell people to do, or I try to teach them in the book, and I also have a course that does this as well, but even saying something positive that isn't related to the negative thing you're saying. So can you catch yourself saying, I'm not beautiful, and instead compliment something that you do believe? So instead of I'm not beautiful, you catch yourself in that moment and you say, I love my hair, or I have pretty eyes. Something that you already believe that, maybe isn't going that extreme to say, I'm gorgeous, if you don't really believe that. But I do think the more you say something, then you do start to believe it. So if every day you tell yourself, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, eventually your mind does catch up with that and you start to believe it. So even if it feels strange or you're not fully buying into it, I think having that repetition over and over again, you will start to believe it and feel that way.
That is very true. And I've seen, because I grew up in a negative environment where it's very critical. Well, not negative, but it was critical, right? And so we expected so much from ourselves. And so that self-esteem and the people pleasing, I struggled with that for a long time. And it wasn't until I would say 4.5 years ago, I met somebody, I'll give her credit to, is Krista Mayshore, that she actually wrote this book, Stop, Snap, and Switch, which kind of talks about that little tidbit that if you start to find yourself going negative, then you got to stop. And so she actually has you wear a bracelet, you snap it to wake yourself up, and you switch into another arm, right? So I've developed it into, it's called the HAS method. But I think that we are so used to talking negative to ourselves that it really does take a while. But I can attest that I don't go to that negative anymore. I used to be so
Yeah.
paranoid about what people said, like my hair. It's so, it's not the best today, but whatever, so it's like you just show up and it's okay. And so it's like I'm grateful I do have hair. I'm losing
Exactly.
it. I have my first two gray hairs, but I my age, I only have two gray hairs, right? So
Right.
you have to focus on the positive. And if you focus on the positive, eventually the negative will be snuffed out, I guess. Would you?
Exactly. And the hardest part is having the awareness first to catch yourself, because we're kind of on autopilot. Because if you think about it, 90% of these phrases we tell ourselves are repetitive. So
Right.
we don't even know probably half the time that we're doing it or saying it, and we're not, it's not sinking in. So I think having the awareness first is really key to that. So I call it our ROR.
Yeah.
What's your record on repeat?
Oh,
That you're just saying over and over again. So kind of catching that. I'm kind of going through the steps I talk about in the book, but step one,
mhm.
figuring out what your record on repeat is. The second step is catching yourself. I call it catch and release. So in that moment, can you stop yourself from saying it and just let the thought go? And then the third step works into how we can reframe.
Mhm.
So the more that we start to do that on repetition, the more natural it becomes. So when we're talking about habits and habit forming, they say that you need to do something at least 21 days to form a new habit. So if you can, month one of my 90-day course, it's just all about identifying what the record on repeat is. So what's your RORs? So by the end of the month, you likely will have a few things that you realize you always say to yourself that would be in that negative bucket. So, oh, I don't give my kids enough of my time or something like that. So if you're saying that, the reason why it's detrimental is because it's making you feel bad
Right.
unnecessarily.
Mhm.
So I also talk about the word sorry. We're saying sorry 8 to 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Half the time, it's not even something that we're sorry about. That's just the default word that we use. So, oh, sorry, can I get by? Why are we saying sorry? It should just be, excuse me, I need to pass. Or because when we say sorry, it has an association that we're doing something wrong.
Right.
So if every day we're just constantly plugging ourselves with like, oh, I don't do this, I'm bad at this, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Think about when you're in a work meeting. Oh, sorry, can I just add something? Why are we sorry? We're providing value in a meeting by adding something.
Mhm.
So it's just really trying to reframe, but it's tough. And the older we get, the harder it is to kind of stop our tracks and then make new tracks. It really is. That's why I think teaching our kids at a younger age, what's possible and kind of talking positive about themselves, us trying, as a parent, I'm not a parent specifically, but I have nieces and nephews, and trying to make sure that I'm not using words that then they could really basically attach to, and then that could end up impacting them in the long run. Sometimes it just takes one teacher or a parent, like what you were saying, the example with your husband is with his dad saying, you're not good at this. How many times did the dad say that to your husband, and then that kind of planted that seed? But sometimes it only takes one
And it
time
does.
someone could say something and it really, really affects you and hits deep, and then you don't let that go.
Right. And that's the trauma that I like fixate on to help heal, because you have to be able to realize just because somebody says something about me doesn't mean that it's true. That's their perspective. And they have the right to their own perspective. That doesn't mean that you have to agree or believe it. And so, yeah, mindset is an amazing thing that I am such a believer now, and I didn't used to be. So
Yes.
talk to us about your daily dose. What's that about?
Yeah. So, like I said, my background's in corporate, so I understand how that works and kind of how we end up working more than 8 hours a day. We work through lunch. So I built Daily Dose to really help employees take breaks in the workday. So a lot of what we do is we have a Wellness Wednesday program where we schedule 30-minute lunch breaks where we educate them on different topics, have cooking demos, yoga sessions, really just to give them a break from work. Because I think there's this misconception that, oh, if I take a break, then I'm just going to be working for that much longer at the end of the day because I need to catch up.
Right.
But really, our brains are not meant to be on for hours at a time. So if we do schedule these breaks, and I tell people it doesn't have to be an hour lunch if that feels uncomfortable, but just take micro breaks, like even going to the bathroom on a regular schedule, get up and get water once an hour, or keep your cell phone in the bedroom where it's not in your office. That way you have to get up if the phone's ringing or to answer a text message. So just stepping away from your workstation, that's going to help you come back and be more productive. Yeah. So it's really, once again, changing that mindset so that people understand our brains need rest. And if you give it rest, you're able to feel better and be more productive. So we work with companies, mid-sized companies, and we do things like virtual health fairs, 30-day challenges. We have a mental health challenge. We talk about nutrition, financial wellness, ergonomics. So we try to cover a lot of different areas that impact our overall health.
That is so important. It's so funny that you talked about that, because yesterday I got up and I went into the kitchen and I actually made myself a meal for lunch, right? And I started thinking, wait a second. I remember when I used to work at corporate, like you went out or you did stuff with a group of people and you actually physically made time for lunch. And as an entrepreneur who's working from home, it's like, oh, maybe I should have like a scheduled time during the day that I should go and actually make a real meal. And that's not just a snack that you grab and you go back into work. And so it's those breaks that are really important. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And with eating, so one thing we teach people is to do mindful eating, which basically would be you're using all your senses to take in your meals. So without any interruption. So, what's the color of my food? How does it smell? How does it taste? How does it feel in my mouth? So really just being present in that moment. And that actually helps with our digestion, because if you're eating a meal and you're reading emails and trying to text people, you're likely shoveling in food. And when we don't chew enough times and we're not properly digesting, this can lead to things like inflammation and we're just not processing our food the way that we're meant to, our bodies are meant to. So that's another thing that we teach. But I love that example because we did used to have breaks when we were fully in the office, but even still, people come back and just shovel down their food while they're, doing a presentation or answering emails, and it just can be unhealthy. So I tell people it's a lot to try and make these drastic changes. And that's the other thing I think people try to do, and that's why so many people fail at resolutions. But if you're listening to this podcast and you think, oh yeah, I should totally do mindful eating, and you don't currently do that, trying to sit down without your cell phone or your computer nearby for every meal or even lunch for the full week, it's going to be challenging to do. So I try to tell people, start small and have things that you can actually achieve. Because what happens is if you try to set these lofty goals and go to the extreme, which our culture is built on doing, I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to double my salary. I mean, we're going from like, 10 to 100. Then if we don't meet those goals, what do? We give up and then we feel bad about ourselves. So it's, this is not helping the cycle. So I tell people, start small. So maybe if you want to try mindful eating, you try it once that week. And if that feels good, then maybe you do it twice the next week, and really trying to build on these habits on a micro level instead of macro.
Very good advice. I love that. And it's funny because, again, with corporate, when I used to run these colleges, I never had a break. I had like a revolving door of people. So I learned to eat within like 2 or 3 minutes, literally.
Hmm.
I think, and I've been like that for a long, long time, but it's that habit that I had so long that I realized, oh my gosh, I'm already done with my food. I'm so used to eating so fast. So I've really tried to slow down. And you're right. It's the habits that to overwhelm yourself is a setup for failure. So I love that you suggest taking it one bite at a time.
Right. And if mindful eating is not something that resonates with you, don't feel like you have to do it. I think that's the other thing we do is we'll, see something on Instagram or we'll hear that our friend is doing it and we'll think, oh, well, I have to do that. I have to, drink hot water with lemon in the morning to get my metabolism going. But if you hate the taste of lemons, don't do that. Just pick something else. So I think we just, we try to jump on the bandwagon of the next quick fix or the health trend, what's going on. And I always tell people you don't need to do everything, but just start with one thing that actually resonates with you. So, I mean, getting out in nature, taking a walk, that's something that I feel like is so healthy, not only for the movement of our physical bodies, but our mental health. So, if we're practicing mindfulness, you can go for a walk without your phone or listening to music. Maybe you bring your phone, but you silence it and then actually take in the sounds again, the sights of nature, and just kind of use that as a mental break. And you can literally do that for 5 minutes. So maybe you eat your lunch, if you want to eat your lunch at your computer and that's what you're comfortable with, but then after lunch, you at least give yourself 5 minutes of no technology time to go for a walk around the block or just something to really clear your mind. And you see how it feels. If you don't like that, then you try something new the next day.
And I think it's important to listen to you. Like, your mind knows what you need. And so listen to your body, listen to what you're thinking. And if it doesn't feel right, then like you said, find something that does. So that's important.
Exactly.
All right. So my question for you is, because you don't have kids, you mentioned, but this information to me was so important because as entrepreneurs, we have to make sure that we're taking time for ourselves and that we're talking positively because it's so easy to have that imposter syndrome come. So that's something that's important. So I'm going to ask you, if you were sitting on a park bench and you were talking to your 19-year-old self or 18-year-old self, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Ooh. I think about being a business owner, and I mean, if I was 19, I wouldn't know that I was going to do that. But I just think one thing I'm realizing in my later years as I mature in my career is that it's so important to have help. But when we start businesses, we tend to be frugal, think we could do everything on our own. So I know if I could go back, I would just have a coach from day one. It didn't take me that long, but maybe call it a year. And then I, invested in a coach and then, stopped doing that and then invested in another coach a couple years later. But I would say if I had to go back, I would reallocate certain funds to get the help I needed, because what we don't realize is how important our time is and that there is a cost associated with that. So I think even as moms, just watching how they try to do everything themselves. And I would say you don't have to invest in getting, help for every single thing, but what are the things you would like to offload that would maybe give you more time with your kids? Or is it a co-working space where you could escape and actually, spend time with your business without having interruptions? So once again, that's going to vary per person, but I would say looking back, maybe not my 19-year-old self, but definitely my early entrepreneur self. But yeah, I don't know, because I like to think I don't have many regrets. So, looking back, yeah, I love that question because I do think about it, but nothing stands out as like oh, I wish I knew that back then.
Yeah.
My regret was never studying abroad, because in college I thought, I can't miss a semester. I went to the University of Scranton, which is a small school, and literally we did the same thing every weekend. But when you're in college, you think, well, I can't miss a whole semester with my friends and going to the same places over and over again. But so that was my only regret that comes to mind with my youth. But I did make up for that because I've spent my 30s and 40s traveling a ton. So yeah, I've made up for that, and I've lived abroad as an adult. So yeah, but that's really the only regret I would say. Or if I could go back, I would tell, younger me, go live abroad, because that's quite an experience.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, and what made you decide to leave your corporate? Because you were there for 15 years. So what made you decide to leave corporate and go into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's funny because when I made the decision to leave, I had a good relationship with my boss, and I said, I don't know what I want to do next. And he said, I think you should start your own business and be your own boss. I was like, no, I don't want to start my own business. The world doesn't need another marketing agency, because that was my background, marketing. And it never even dawned on me to go in a different direction. But I was my most recent job before Daily Dose, I was in an industry that was a bit outdated, and it was very male dominated, and a lot of people that were further along in their career, kind of close to retirement, they didn't really like change. They didn't want to, adopt new processes. And I'm very much like that, where I want to make an impact. I wanted to implement new things. And I had reached a point where I didn't feel like I was getting the support I needed from the leadership team. And I just felt like I was hitting these roadblocks where it had been that way for a couple of years. And I just hit a breaking point where I was like, you know what? I don't feel supported. I don't feel like I can make the change I want. Things are stagnant, and this is no longer the environment for me. So I had to leave, and that's when I made the decision to go live abroad for a couple months and figure out what I wanted to do next. And then COVID hit. So my trip was cut short. I had to come home, and I was just thinking, I don't want to get another marketing job doing the same thing. And the only thing I really felt passionate about at that time was wellness and kind of learning about natural modalities and different things we could be doing. So I just kind of started the business without much thought, and it's been great. It's been such a learning experience, but I do love the business world in corporate America. So it was important for me to still stay within that, but kind of just pair it with something that I loved, like wellness, because I do think there's a lot of resources available to us as individuals from a wellness standpoint, but we spend so much of our day working, and a lot of companies just aren't giving employees the resources they need. So I felt like there was a real need there to kind of fulfill that. And luckily more companies are doing that now, and there's more corporate wellness companies coming out. So yeah, I'm happy to see the trends going in that direction.
Well, I commend you because you followed your calling, basically is what I call it, that, you followed your intuition, and I don't feel like this is true to me. And so I'm going to leave now, and that you took time to figure it out. And now you're doing something that you love with something that you loved, and
right.
So congratulations. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. I know. And, women always say, oh, I have a gut feeling, but a lot of times we don't follow the gut feeling. And what happens? Our guts always end up being right.
Always right.
So yep. That would be a piece of advice I would just give to any of the listeners, that if you ever feeling like you don't know what to do, kind of just close your eyes and just ask yourself and see what your gut is telling you, because our bodies usually do kind of guide us to the answers. I think sometimes if we don't want it to be that answer, we don't follow it, but we kind of know. We know what's best for us deep down.
And when you don't follow it, you become stagnant because you know what you're supposed to be doing and you're fighting against it, So
right.
It's very interesting.
And one of the best pieces of advice I received was a therapist of mine years ago. And I'm very much like, should I do this or that? Or I can become paralyzed making decisions. And she said, well, if you don't know what to do, don't do anything. And it never even dawned on me that was an option, because I'm like, well, do I do this or this? And she's like, well, if you aren't feeling pulled in one of those directions, just basically sit still until you do know. And it was so profound to me because, like I said, I'm usually like, okay, is it black or white? And it's like there could be gray. You could, or it could just be putting things on pause. And that was really helpful advice. So if I ever feel like I don't know what to do, just kind of take a pause and give yourself more time. And then I think the answer will come to you.
I agree with that. That's great. That's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they find you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. I just started a business page when I launched the book for Instagram. So it's just my name, Georgia, like the state, and the last name is Homsany. I'm also on LinkedIn. I live there every day. And you can find the book on georgiahomsany.com. That also will give you the option to upgrade to that 90-day masterclass I talked about, which basically, if you read the book and you are learning about the steps, but you feel like you need extra support implementing them, right? Because I feel like that's so hard. We ingest all this information and we're like, that's a great idea. And then we hop off a webinar or we read a book and then we're like, okay, on to the next thing. So the course actually helps you put that into practice. So you can find that on georgiahomsany.com, or the book is also available on Amazon.
Fantastic. All right, Unbreakable Mompreneurs, I just wanted to have you really think about what is important to you, and are you following what your gut is really telling you, and are you taking time for yourself and talking positively? So Georgia, thank you so much for adding so many golden nuggets that we can actually apply in our daily lives. So thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you, Charisse, and thanks everyone for listening, and would love to stay connected. So if you've listened to this episode, connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'd love to hear from you and hear whatever your takeaways were.
All right. Thank you. See you later.
All right.
Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.